I used to think that success was all about setting the right goals. I mean, the perfect targets, the big plans, the vision board stuff. But after years of working as a full-time lawyer, I've realized that goals, they don't get you there. But systems, they do. Because goals, they rely on motivation. But motivation, it comes and goes. Systems, on the other hand, can keep quietly working in the most difficult of times and make success almost automatic. So in this video, I am going to show you how to build systems that can make achieving your goals actually realistic instead of just a passing thought. So firstly, let's look at the problem with goals. And I think when you are setting a goal, it does feel good at first and you get that initial bout of motivation. But the problem is motivation, it fades and life gets busy and suddenly those goals can feel very hard away. And I don't think you fail with your goals because you don't want them enough or anything like that. I mean, if you've set a goal, you've identified it as something that you want. And so I don't think you don't achieve it because you don't want it enough. I really think you don't achieve it because you just don't have any structure in place to ultimately achieve that goal. And I'll admit, for instance, like I used to be a real new year, new me type person. And on New Year's, I would set this whole long list of goals. But after like 2 or 3 weeks into the new year, those goals would have been a distant memory because ultimately I just had no structure in place in terms of how I was actually going to achieve those goals. And there's the saying that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And I think that is so true because ultimately goals on their own, they're not really much. I mean, I like to think of goals as almost like having a good North Star to work towards, and they can give you a bit of a sense of direction to get going. But ultimately, it is going to be the system that you create that is going to enable you to achieve that ultimate goal. So what is a system in the context we're talking about here? And I like to just think of a system as a series of steps that are easily repeatable and are going to make achieving your goal as likely as possible. And so I like to almost think of a system as kind of the answer to if someone was going to ask you, how are you going to achieve the goal that you've identified? So it's like, instead of you just saying, I want to get fit as a goal, the system would be more, all right, I need to work out 5 times a week. I'm going to block those sessions in my calendar and I'm going to position them around times of the day that are most convenient for me and when I have the most amount of energy. That would be more the system to how you're actually going to achieve that goal of getting fit. And so why do these systems work? Well, I think one of the real benefits is that they remove the need for willpower and motivation, and they really protect you, like even on your worst of days, because even if you are like super stressed or tired or busy, if you can just tell yourself that I'm just going to follow the actions that I've set down in my system, then you will ultimately be able to still progress and achieve things. And it also like helps to build self-trust in yourself because every small action you take, every small win, that is like a vote of confidence to your brain. And it tells your brain, yes, I am the type of person that actually does follow through with the things that I've said that I'm going to do. And over time, that confidence, it compounds and ultimately it will make that progress almost inevitable. Okay, so how do we build a system that actually works? And the real core principle is that we need to build it for repeatability because a system done consistently is always going to outperform a big old plan that is only done occasionally. And I almost like to think of it as building a bridge. And imagine your goal is at the other end of the bridge. So the system is going to be the structure that gets you there. But the stronger and more repeatable each step of the bridge is, the safer the bridge ultimately becomes. And so how exactly should we do this? Well, I like to also think of it almost as like an inverse pyramid. And at the top of the pyramid, you would have your really high level goal. And then as you go down, you would like funnel down the pyramid. And as you're going down, you become more and more granular in terms of the steps that are necessary to achieve that goal. And as we are going down this inverse pyramid, there are 2 very important principles that we should continue to remind ourselves almost at every step as we're going down that pyramid. So firstly, we need to always remember that real life is going to get in the way. And so we should not be designing this system based on the fantasy version of ourselves, like the version that gets up at 5 a.m. and journals and drinks kale smoothies and has this superhuman energy levels. Like, no, that is just not realistic. Instead, we need to design the system for the version that does snooze the alarm sometimes and does struggle with willpower and motivation and has real life commitments. The second thing is that in each step of the pyramid, we should really try to remove any of the friction that is going to potentially prevent us from doing those things. Because the less you have to think about things and the less things are going to get in the way, the more likely you will actually follow through on all of the action steps. And so what could this almost look like as an example? Well, let's say maybe we had the big goal of wanting to run a marathon. Well, the first step might be to think to yourself, all right, how many times a week then am I going to need to train? And you might think, all right, I probably need to run at least 4 times a week to build my fitness levels up to the appropriate level. And then you might think, okay, well, what's going to stop me from running 4 times a week? Well, probably the scheduling is going to be an issue. So you need to think about when are you actually going to be running? And then you might say, okay, weekends is probably when I've got the most time. So I'm going to run both weekend days. And then I'm going to do 2 morning sessions a week. And so, okay, that sounds good. But again, like, is anything going to stop you from actually running on those days that you've allocated there? And then you might think, well, in the mornings, I do sometimes struggle with energy and I do like to snooze the alarm. And so then you might, as a solution to that, say, all right, well, I'm gonna lay out my clothes the night before so it's as easy as possible for me to get going. And no matter how I'm feeling, I am just gonna start the run and try to make an attempt at it. And hopefully then things will get easier. And so what you're trying to do basically is just go down that pyramid and at each step, just like ask yourself, like, is there anything that's gonna get in the way? And just try to work through any of those barriers, because ultimately, there's always going to be solutions to each of those barriers. It will just take a little bit of thinking and a little bit of designing your environment to work for you and to enable you to achieve all of those things. And then finally, once you've actually set up your system, don't just forget about it. What I would advise is almost every week, have a quick system check and treat it almost like maintenance. I mean, if your car needs a service, so does your productivity levels. So at the end of the week, after completing a week of your system, just think to yourself, like, what actually worked well and what kept me going? And is there anything that I can do to make it run even smoother and be even easier for me to achieve those things? And so just do that audit regularly, and then the system should just continue to run as efficiently as possible. And so building systems, it's not about working harder, it's about working smarter and more predictable. And it will help you to stop relying on motivation and to start creating genuine momentum. And that is why it really is the one habit that is changing my life. And I'm confident that once you build your own systems, it can change yours too. I hope you found this video useful. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.